Welcome to GardenFork Radio. Thanks for downloading the show. Thanks for giving us a listen. This is Eric. I'm your host. We have this eclectic DIY show. We could talk about food. We could talk about fixing things. Today, my friend Will Wallace from the Weekend Homestead is here, and we're going to talk about insulation. Hey, sir.
How are you doing today?
It's 16 degrees outside.
It is 16 degrees. Amazingly enough, it was 60 less than 5 days ago.
Yes, I got garlic. That's actually a new video episode I just did, but I planted garlic because, long story short, it frosted. I had about an inch of frost in the ground, and then it got so warm that all the frost came out of the ground, and I could get more garlic in.
I saw that video. It was pretty neat. We had the weirdest thing. There was snow on the ground, and it was lightning and thundering outside, so it was very strange here in Wisconsin.
It did that here, too. We have, is that called thunder snow or something, or...
I don't know. I think thunder snow is when it's snowing and there's actually thunder, but we had severe thunderstorms in December, which was not normal for us. A lot of trees down all over the place.
Welcome to the new normal. Yeah, my sister lives in the St. Louis area and got whacked. She did not, but they got whacked by those tornado clusters. She spent the evening in her basement.
Do you think Erin made it back from her hike because of the windstorms down where she is in Wisconsin?
So, Erin, the impatient gardener, who's another co-host, we're on this three-way text between Will and Erin and I, and Erin sent us pictures of her road, and she said, yeah, I got to hike out of here to go to work, and I got to hitchhike, and I'm like, no, you're not hitchhiking, I'm calling you an Uber, you know. But the trees are blocking the road, and she said we can't touch the trees because they're entangled in power lines. We did hear from her later in the day, and she'd safely made it to work. So,
yes, I just thought I'd give a quick ribbing on that one. I thought that was a funny text chain.
But yeah, so I got the garlic in the ground, and it is 16 degrees. So today I got up. The Labradors, of course, wake you up, and I had to feed them and make the camera operator coffee, and I was in my bare feet in the kitchen, and this is a clapboard center chimney colonial, which was built in 1949, so you can guess how it was built. And I'm in my bare feet, and I notice as my feet are at the bottom of the cabinets, I feel cold air coming over my feet.
That's a problem.
And I thought we could talk about insulation today, some bigger project stuff, some smaller dollar stuff, and we've done both. So Will and I are going to share our experiences.
I've done a lot of insulating in the last probably 30 days. It's been one of the biggest projects we've been working on even because insulation isn't just about heat and cold. It's also about sound. Like I'm using insulation in a way to deaden sound between two levels on an upper lower apartment building that we have.
That is actually key because my house in Brooklyn is an apartment house, and we can hear our neighbors upstairs because there's absolutely no insulation. It was built in 1910. So if they clomp around, I'm hearing them clomp around. So,
well, the home improvement stores have some new stuff that's actually it's an R value insulation, but it actually is a sound deadening one. And what they recommend is you install like a cheaper insulation up against the floor and then have an air gap and then put this a little bit more expensive insulation down and then put your sheetrock or your ceiling up. And between the dampening of the one up against the floor, which absorbs the vibration, and the other one that absorbs the sound, and that air gap in there, basically you can kill probably about 85% of your sound.
Nice. So what do I do about the cold air coming across my feet in the kitchen?
I think the big thing that a lot of people think of is, I need to stuff insulation everywhere. I actually tell people, wait, before you put anything anywhere, figure out where it's coming from. Because that cold air is coming from somewhere, you have to kind of figure out where it's coming from. So you look at, okay, if it's around a window, you can use one of those temperature sensors to figure out where the air gaps are there. If it's on the floor, you basically have to trace backwards to figure out like, hey, did my dryer vent separate from the wall outside, and now air is coming along that pipe under the floor, and it's really the dryer vent is the issue, not I need insulation in my ceiling or floor. So that's one thing I tell people all the time is a lot of people just start stuffing insulation places, but you got to kind of figure out where it's coming from and why before you go to what insulation, because that'll tell you what you need to do then.
That is actually, it is right next to the exterior door, and the exterior door does leak air, which we could talk about in a minute because I have a complaint about that. So,
Do you think it's the sweep on the bottom of the door or the gasket around the outside?
well, it has a sweep and it does not have a gasket. So I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here for a minute. All right.
All right, I'm going.
I have made fun of This Old House before. Perhaps I've pointed out some issues I have with the This Old House TV series, and I think the people that are on that show are really nice, but nothing ever goes wrong on the show. And then they have another show called Ask This Old House, where they go fix little things at people's houses, and it's on YouTube, so you can watch. And one of them was how to fix an exterior door that leaks air. And Tommy, the contractor, goes to this house, and it has a gap at the bottom, so they put a sweep at the bottom. And then the gasket around the door has fallen out, or it's not even there. Mine, it's an old door, so it's not even there. And I keep trying to put gasket material with the sticky tape in there, and it always falls out because of the paint or there's dirt on the trim or whatever. So the contractor, Tom, he pulls out what looks like an electric stapler, but it's actually a router designed to route a 45-degree angle hole in the side of the door jamb, and then at the very end of the hole, it makes a cavity with that same router. It has like a bulb at the end. And then he puts in a gasket material that is barbed at the end, so the gasket material grabs in, so it doesn't fall out. And my complaint with that is I looked up the tool. It's a $400 tool. And I'm like, well, not everyone has that, you know? So do I just go to the Home Depot and buy the door sealing gasket material, or is there something better?
The big one is prep the surface before you install that stuff. If you can get down to wood or something that has a tooth on it, is what they call it, like a rougher surface, it'll stick to it better than a lot of people will just take that foam and just stick it onto whatever it is. But if the surface you're sticking on isn't very stable or solid, it won't stick very well. So that's one thing to look at. The other thing is figure out if you want a foam one or if you should have a rubber one, because there are some doors and styles where, like, give you example, a metal door works better with the rubber because the door is colder. So the rubber stands up better than the foam does. Like wood doors, the foam works really, really well. The rubber works really well on metal doors.
Wow.
So know your material.
Do you have a degree in thermodynamics or something? Is this?
I do, actually. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I don't know if you guys know that or not.
So what I thought I could maybe do was I have a Dremel tool, and I recently, a very good friend of mine has a 3D printer, and he let me play around with it. And I thought, the Dremel you can put router bits on. And I thought I could, maybe it's even sold by Dremel, but I could 3D print a little rig that goes on the end of the Dremel to position it at a 45-degree angle in the door jamb. And I could cut with this homemade tool my own 45-degree angle dado or cavity, actually, and then buy that special material, because that doesn't need sticky double stick tape. It holds in by friction. Is that the word, friction, maybe? I don't know.
Yep.
But I was intrigued by that. But that's a great point, that you could essentially sand off a 1/4 inch of the paint and use the sticky gasket material, and it would hold a lot better.
Can I give you one more tip on the sticky gas material?
Well, sure, Mr. Thermodynamics.
Gorilla Glue or some of those other glue type products, find a glue that matches to what you're using. So there's some glues that work really good on metal. There's some glues that work really good on wood. If you smear a tiny bead of it down where you're going to put the tape and then put it on there, I'm not saying that the companies that make the foam stuff, they're probably really good at making foam, and the glue and the sticky part of it's kind of an afterthought.
Yeah.
But if you put an additional surface on there, that glue that's specific for, let's say, wood from, I'm going to use a brand, Gorilla. I'm just going to talk about, they're not a sponsor, but they're just one of the ones. They make glue that's specific for wood. You put that on there, and then you put the the foam or the film over the top of that, and then have it hold and dry and harden, you get a better adhesion to the wood material. The people who make the foam, they just put a generic glue on the back of that because they got to get it to work with 85% of the materials out there, but you can actually put another glue on and then glue the glue onto that, if that makes sense.
It does. Wow. That's brilliant.
There you go.
That's called, is the Gorilla Glue, the wood glue is, I believe, called a polyurethane glue. Is that correct?
I don't know much about that stuff. That's the chemical stuff. I know thermodynamics.
Right, I'm the chemical engineer.
You're the chemical engineer. You should know this. So,
yikes. So, what about spray foam? I actually really love spray foam. I've spray foamed the whole ceiling of my building in New York, and I also just love the cans of spray foam to the point that I've ruined many Carhartt sweatshirts because you can't get the spray foam off of them. So
yes, when you use spray foam, wear clothes that you never will want to wear again.
Yeah,
just have spray foam clothes. It sounds weird, but if you get even a drop on it, you're never getting that stuff off.
Yeah, I have a set of coveralls, a pair of coveralls. Why do they call them a pair of I have some coveralls that I got at there's a store near me that sells what's that, like factory seconds of like Dickie and Carhartt and all that kind of thing, work clothing. And I got some coveralls for really inexpensive, and those are my sacrificial coveralls.
Nice.
Hey there. I bet you think I'm going to talk about Patreon or using the GardenFork Amazon link. No, I'm going to ask you to do something for someone else. And you don't know who that person is. You're just going to go do this thing, and then you have no control over who it benefits, but it'll benefit more than one person. And that is to consider donating blood at a local Red Cross blood drive or at a local hospital. I just gave blood on Tuesday, and that was at Memorial Sloan Kettering in Manhattan. They're treating a friend of mine for cancer. They're keeping him alive, and I'm like, this is my thank you to you guys, is here's my blood. So I have a rare blood type, so it's kind of like, oh, I should share this blood with people. And then I realized that everyone's blood is important. It allows the rare blood type to go just to the people that really need it, and then the more popular blood types, is that a word? Your average every person needs some blood could just have the blood from, the A blood or the B blood. I have O negative blood, which is 7% of the country has, I think, and yet it is a universal donor blood, so anyone can take my blood. And I'm told that it goes into the neonatal intensive care, or natal intensive care, neonic. If you do decide to make an appointment to donate, the best thing you can do to prepare is to drink extra water the 3 days before your appointment. So like 2 big glasses of water each day, 3 days in a row before your appointment. So I'd love it if you became a patron. That'd be great. Or you want to use a affiliate link. What I'd love even more is if you thought about donating blood. There are some restrictions to keep the blood supply really clean. So you may not be, what's the word? Qualified to give blood? That's the wrong word. But anyway, redcrossblood.org, or go to your local hospital's website, see if they have a blood donation section. Either way, there you go. Back to the show.
I tell you, on the spray foam side of it, just like we were talking about, they make glue for different uses. They make spray foam for different uses now too. So like if you have an area where you have pests coming in, you can get anti-pest spray foam. You can get fire-resistant spray foam. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's some places required as a code around different types of pipes and things like that. They have different colors now. They have like the yellow, the black, the gray. So depending on where you're using it, they have different flavors now. It's pretty neat stuff.
Something that people neglect, and at least my house was home built, And so all the electrical wire comes up through the hollow of the interior walls up into the attic through is it called the king stud, the jack stud? It's the stud that runs across the top of your sheetrock wall on the ceiling joists, and they are exposed in the attic underneath your insulation, which is usually blown in or blanket insulation. But all those holes where the wire comes up through are leaking warm air into your attic.
Yep.
And you can crawl through there with the fire resistant spray foam and seal those. And you might not think it makes a difference, but just sealing existing cracks in the sheetrock where it joins the studs in your ceiling in the attic makes a big difference.
You want to hear a funny story about that exact thing?
Yeah.
So you know that I'm building this hobby shop garage project on our weekend homestead property, and it's all finished now. Getting close to finish. We're doing the finishing work. Like today is trim and that kind of stuff. But in the utility space in there's the chase that all the electrical wires run up to go into the attic from the panel. And we were standing outside and I'm looking at the roof and there's no snow melted anywhere on the roof. It's a perfect layer just because we have all that blown in insulation and the R38 blankets that we have in there and all this other stuff. And there's this one little strip where the snow is melting. Like it's probably about 5 inches wide down at the edge. And I'm like, wonder why that's there. And we're thinking about what's in the space. Well, the corner wall inside the building, the electrical runs up that chase. Well, inside that chase, you can't really put insulation in that chase where the wires all go because it's just super crowded.
Right.
And what was happening is exactly what you were talking about is heat was coming up through the panel, through that cavity into the attic. And it was, because it's near the outside wall, it was warm enough that it was melting the snow on the roof and causing a little bit of ice to build up there. So we used our favorite product, spray foam, and spray foam that area. We drilled a couple holes in the wall to kind of get a couple different elevations, and we basically filled the cavity with the foam, and it's never had an issue again. I would have never thought, with all of the different things we've done, that little bit of space, I mean, the holes are maybe an inch in diameter, and there's probably 6 of them up there. I wouldn't have believed that much heat would have gone up through that space, but that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah, and if you have a roof in the winter and you notice that snow's melting somewhere, but it's not melting somewhere else, and it's not on account of the sun, you're getting heat from somewhere, and it's escaping and heating up the roof enough to melt the snow, and that's a red flag. That means there's an insulation issue in your attic. A buddy of mine spray foamed his attic, and at least in New England here, they don't spray foam the floor of the attic. They spray foam the joists and the sheathing, the underneath of the sheathing.
Yep.
And they put in what's that? It's called Sonavents. They put in ProVent, so they go from the vents under your soffit along the sheathing to the ridge vent. They put in, it looks like a flimsy piece of plastic, but it still allows some cool air to go across the sheathing to keep your shingles cooler in the summer. But then they spray foam that whole joist space on the sheathing. And it was amazing, the difference in his house. They spray that and then they have to paint it with a fire-resistant paint because spray foam is flammable. It wasn't cheap, but man, it made a huge difference in his house.
Yeah, that spray foam stuff, I mean, they've come such a long way. I've been tempted to get the do-it-yourself kit for spray foam.
Yes.
It's expensive. I mean, the tanks are $600 or something like that to do whatever it was, like 400 square feet. But at some point in time, I'll probably break down and get one of the professional ones. I guess I stick to what I call the amateur cans, which are the shake cans that you can get and just, go to town and wherever. So it's pretty neat. I do have a hack for you, by the way, if you want a secret spray foam hack. I've got one for you guys.
Sure. Oh, your voice is dropping out. I didn't edit that. That's just.
Oh, hold on. Is everything okay now?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, I thought I was like talking. I'm like, I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, uh-oh. No, so here's the hack. Go to the home improvement store and buy yourself some of that clear, flexible tubing that's about the same size as your spray foam can nozzle. and you put the screw-on nozzle on the top of the spray foam can. But the hard part about spray foam cans is the way they work is you have to have them upside down in order for it to push the foam out. Well, it's really hard to get into a lot of places. Like, I'll give you an example around that electrical panel, we couldn't get the nozzle up into the space. So what I did was I put this flexible piece of clear plastic hose on there. It was like $1 or $2. Well, now I've just extended that spray can, another 2 feet, let's say. And now I take that flexi hose and I stick it through little holes or up into little spaces, and it can bend around. And now I can hold that spray can at a regular level and not try to shove it up into a small space to get it to go. And it basically extends your reach and makes it super flexible to get into spaces that are really hard to get to.
Excellent. Yeah, you have to keep the can upside down, and that can be tricky when you're in the corner of an attic.
Yeah. Or even like our thing where we were trying to fill that cavity, I just drilled a bunch of 1/4-inch holes that were easy to fix in the sheetrock, put the nozzle in, slid it in there, and then basically sprayed the can and pulled the hose up at the same time. And basically it just filled the cavity inside of there. And once it expanded, it filled the entire space, and we were good to go. And we were able to fill a 2x4 cavity by doing that.
So the other place in my house that leaks a lot is the around here they call it the mud sill, but it's the sill plate and then the vertical 2x10 or 2x8 that goes up from the sill plate to hold it ties in the house into the concrete foundation. And in my house, that has no insulation.
Do you have access to the outside where that makes that connection?
Yeah, it's the bottom of the clapboard.
One thing you could do there, and we've done this on a number of buildings, and actually it's code where we are, if you have a heated floor, which we have in our shop, you have to have a certain amount of R value on the outside of the concrete and then down below the frost line.
Oh, wow.
So we actually you have to go down 3 feet with 2 inches of foam down the side of the building if you have a heated concrete slab. So we're building what's called slab on grade.
Yeah.
So you could do the same thing, which is you buy that 1 or 2 inch foam and basically run it through the table saw. It cuts super easy. You can cut it into strips and then basically dig down along the side of your house and put it on the underside of your siding down under the ground and then push the earth back up against it. Nice thing is, if you don't like the pink color, you can always paint it or get some aluminum flashing and put it over the top of it. But that's a real easy way to seal that piece up if you can.
Wow. Because I was thinking to buy the spray foam kit and spray it from the inside, be in the basement and go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you have access to the inside, that's the best way to do it, is to fill that cavity with spray foam. I mean, that by far, but if you can't get in there, the next best is on the outside, putting some pink foam on the outside block or whatever, and you can just glue it on it with some PL like 400 or something.
Yeah, my house was built before they had building codes, I think.
That's okay.
So that's my next big thing, and I'm working on a video that kind of shows a DIY way to insulate that. It's not it's mud sill. I'll have to look up the word, of course.
The sill plate. It's the sill plate between the block and the first row of 2x4s, or what they connect to.
All right. Anyway, that area is rife for heat exiting and cold air coming in. The other thing is to keep your basement door closed is actually a thing in your house.
Yes. Do you close your vents in your house for like which heating vents are open and which cold air vents are open?
No, I have a hot water baseboard here, and I just have 2 zones. I have a upstairs and downstairs thermostats.
I'm curious you always hear all these different stories with people who have like forced air where like, oh, we have these open in the summer, but then these are open in the winter, and which ones get covered up and stuff. And I've never figured out the science of how people come up with what they do, but everybody has their thing they do in their house. And sometimes those little things make all the difference.
I think forced air has got to be the most inefficient way to heat and cool a house.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan of radiant heat. We now have it in a couple of our buildings and properties, and it works. It's bulletproof. It never breaks. It's a deep heat. I don't know how to describe it. Like those buildings just naturally feel warmer at 72 degrees than one that's heated by forced air, in my opinion.
Yeah, It's interesting. This is kind of an aside from the forced air, but New York City just passed legislation to phase out natural gas furnaces in New York City.
Do you think that's because they don't want to upgrade the infrastructure to support the natural gas?
No, it's the methane. It's the carbon
Gotcha.
footprint. To help with the climate crisis going on. But it's interesting because you can have an induction cook. They're all just moving to electric heat, so basically they're going to use heat pumps. And in New York City, you can do that. You can do that quite easily.
Yeah, the grid will easily support that. So.
Yeah. So I had, so we talked about insulating my door. We talked about spray foam and how much we love it. I have used that 2-tank spray foam system at a friend's house, and you have to keep it at a certain temperature. You have to invert the cans. They look like helium party balloon cans. Tanks, I guess is the better word. The inexpensive, the kit that's only $300. So, but I think for that sill plate thing, I might invest in them. It's because I think that many cans of spray foam, buying the great stuff in the orange can might almost equate to getting the regular tanks.
Well, I will say, I mean, we had a property that we did a remodel on where we did the spray, and I actually hired that out, and it was relatively inexpensive. I think the space is 24 by 45 is the square of the concrete. And I think it was $600 for us to have the guy come in with the big truck. And he just basically, we taped everything off and he walked along and went psh, 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 around the thing. He was there for maybe 25 minutes total. Wow. And filled all the spaces around the bottom. But that was before we had walls, before we had anything. So it was really easy because spray foam using that stuff makes a mess. No matter what, there's little particles that stick to everything. So yes. Expect that you're going to get spray foam on everything when they do it. It's just the nature of how it works. But once he came through and did that, that was probably the best $600 investment we had ever because it sealed that entire space up.
Yeah, we insulated the top floor of our brownstone in Brooklyn. Was converted from an apartment to a loft, like art studio, a really long time ago, and the ceiling joists and the roof sheathing is exposed when I bought the building, and it had what's called a modine heater up there to supplement the heat. Those are those ones that hang from the ceiling. They have a gas burner with a forced air fan. You see them in factories and stuff. And I got our local spray foam company. They literally ran a hose through the front window, the top floor, and I covered everything in plastic. The apartment was empty, and they spray foamed the joists, and the joists in an old brownstone are about 14 inches deep, and it made such a huge difference in the heat for the whole building. It was amazing.
It's funny how little things like that are things that make your life, I don't want to say challenging, but just doing little things like around your windows or doors all of a sudden improves the quality of your home. And this stuff isn't expensive. I mean, that spray foam stuff is $4 a can. The insulation, the rubber gasket thing that we were talking about, that's maybe $10 or so. But those little things, you do them around your house and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's like that 1% to infinity thing that I talk about, where just tiny steps every day can get you toward a bigger accomplishment,
Absolutely.
That was deep, wasn't it?
That was great.
So, wow, we've talked about insulation, and I still want to talk more, but our listeners are they've moved from the bedroom to the part of the living room where they have their work Zoom call.
It's time to start doing their workouts and doing the work stuff.
Will and I are going to stick around for the after show for the GardenFork patrons. We'll probably divulge some deep secrets there because I always extract them from Will for the after show. But if you guys have had some experience with insulation, I would love to hear from you. There's a couple of people that watch the show on YouTube that are heating and air conditioning experts. One guy's name is Dave. I don't know if Dave listens to the podcast, but it'd be interesting to hear your experiences, and we can read those on the air. That would be fun. What do you think?
That'd be awesome.
All right, go out and do cool stuff and make it a great day, everyone. Thank you, Will.
Thanks.
GardenFork Radio is produced in Brooklyn, New York by GardenFork Media, LLC. Our executive producer is Jimmy Gooch. You can learn more about Jimmy and the custom hollow books he makes at hollowbooks.com. The music for our show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.